for questions and answers. To give you a little bit of context to this bit of work, so LOTI launched a COVID Innovation Fund challenge in February, looking to fund 2 projects which involve London LOTI boroughs collaborating together to achieve shared outcomes for London. This was one of the 2 projects funded in the data. So there was a digital project and this one's in the data stream. It's a really great initiative which builds on some of the really good work that Westminster have done previously on digital exclusion and on mapping digital exclusion, expands the scope and the remit of that work, and also creates a methodology for the other borough partners to adopt and adapt and iterate that work and to grow it, to make it relevant to their boroughs, but also to all boroughs across London. So we'll get into a little bit more of the detail of what those outputs look like. But one thing that will definitely come out of this project are tools that everyone in London can use, and iterated guidance and understanding around digital exclusion, which has been tested across 5 partner boroughs. So I will now hand over to Rhoda to kick things off. Yeah, Rhoda, do you want to take it away?
Morning all. I'm Rhoda Phillips. I'm the Digital Inclusion and Talent Lead for Westminster, but also the overall project lead for this project. Although I'd like to caveat that by saying that, actually the project lead is actually a very equal footing with the rest of the borough leads in terms of driving this project forward, recognizing everyone's expertise, learnings and support that they bring to the table. So this is, as Jay said, it's a multi-borough collaboration, and it's London boroughs of Barnet, Brent, Kensington and Chelsea, Southwark and Westminster. Next slide, please, Jay. So this project is about using data smartly, innovatively to create the most impact in our residents' lives, as well as the businesses in terms of digital inclusion. And as we know, digital inclusion is nuanced, and we recognize that the needs of our residents and businesses are very different and complex. So to be able to make a difference and meet those needs and target interventions, as boroughs, we need to understand who are the most affected or vulnerable to digital exclusion, as well as where they are, what would make the biggest impact in terms of support as well. We also thought we need to understand what the barriers are, not only in terms of infrastructure, like, for example, broadband and devices, although that's very, very much part of that, and it's also very important. But also, I think it's also very important to understand the needs in terms of the behaviors and the attitudes, and where our residents are or businesses are in terms of their digital inclusion journey, which means that this should include residents, their needs, their aspirations, but also the barriers. So as Jay was saying, this project really seeks to do this by building a digital inclusion map using open national data sets and local data sets available. And as all of the partner boroughs do this, we intend, as mentioned again by Jay, is that we intend to document our journey and build a digital inclusion mapping toolkit that people can use to support other LAs or organizations in terms of digital inclusion journey. So next slide, please, Jay. So how are we approaching this project? It is through a very collaborative process, recognizing the expertise and experiences and resources that each partner borough brings. So for some elements of the project, some boroughs are ahead in the journey and are there to support others or share learnings and expertise. So for example, in this project in particular, Westminster has completed the phase 1 mapping. We've done our own version of our map using national data sets and local data sets. And we've done a thorough needs assessment as well, and did persona analysis work. And as we build from here, rather than starting from scratch, other boroughs look to replicate this and look at insights derived from that process and validate that in a way, and what worked, what didn't work, what needs to be improved and add on. And where the other boroughs validate the process and approach and where gaps are identified, this is covered and ensuring that we capture and address making our data richer and robust. So for example, for personas, so we've done some personas, but other boroughs go and validate it. And when we ensure that the portfolio of and the profiles of personas are reflective across pan-London. So there are also elements to that. The further research is identified in this project, and partner boroughs agree and do that. And that's the reason why like Barnet and Brent and Southwark are doing a deeper dive in terms of interventions in very specific vulnerable groups. So I will now pass this on to and you know, also with this one, as I said, it has to be replicable, it has to be scalable, and by the end of this project, we aim to have a toolkit that others can take away and use in their journey. So I will now pass this on to Maddie, who will talk more about the phase 1 mapping and identifying needs. Maddie?
Thanks, Rhoda. Yeah, I'm Madeleine Leithley. I'm the digital workstream lead at Brent, and alongside Southwark and Barnet, we're kind of the phase 1 within this project. So as Rhoda said, we're kind of playing a role in informing the mapping while looking at our national and local data sets to really feed in to creating that map. But also with the work Westminster had done before, developing kind of 20% digitally excluded personas, we've taken each of those personas back to our councils to really validate the work that's already been done to make sure that it's kind of replicated across London and that those personas kind of reflect the needs of those different groups across London. And that's been really positive, the feedback there that actually what Westminster had picked out can be implemented and has been validated by kind of our services, and also identify kind of areas where maybe we can create further personas for specific areas. So feeding that into being able to replicate what's been done across London and inform those localized kind of maps as we go forward. Can we go next slide, please, Jay? As part of that phase 1, as I said, we've done that validating of that persona analysis, but what we've also done is we're doing kind of a deep dive into 3 specific digital exclusion groups who benefited from digital inclusion support over the past year. So we're working with those unemployed individuals or low skills, those with learning disabilities, and those whose families, they were home learning while schools were closed, and obviously they all received devices through different programs at each of our councils. So we're completing a research exercise to understand how those devices have been used, kind of what the barriers are there, and how we can use that to inform the support we offer to those groups and other groups that have been identified as digitally excluded moving forward. The idea being, with that across 3 different boroughs, that research going on, what we pull out of that again can feed into this toolkit and hopefully be applicable to lots of other London boroughs going forward. So I believe that's everything from a phase 1 perspective, and I'm going to pass over to Fenella. Oh no, sorry, back to Rhoda, I believe.
That's fine. So what we'll be doing as well, and following from phase 1 mapping, so we'll do the phase 2, and the phase 2 mapping that we're doing, we'll dive into the detail of mapping the softer aspects of exclusion via face-to-face survey, and we're commencing that piece of work in the next 2 weeks. So we will gather quantitative data on the incidence of structural and behavioral barriers driving these patterns through a face-to-face survey, and these insights are crucial to map the softer aspects so that we can effectively target our interventions. So the survey is very much aligned to our persona research and the quant findings in phase 1 of the project. So it's designed to target some of the key excluded groups identified from both our local and national research to better understand the challenges, barriers, and potential motivators to becoming digitally included. So it's a 10 to 12 minute survey. It will be conducted, and a minimum of 800 respondents will be interviewed across both Westminster and RBKC, and we have set quotas and to capture the views of 4 vulnerable groups, including the unemployed, those who are disabled or who care for someone with disability, and those who are over 60 and low-income households. So in terms of what the survey will cover, it will cover current usage and access to the internet, device ownership, barriers, so connectivity, digital skills and training, motivation and attitude, and trust. And when it comes to trust, it's about the stages of change behavior, perceived impacts and benefits, future behavior and needs, but also we will be capturing key demographic information, including age, status, employment, gender, ethnicity, socioeconomic classification, which is deduced from acorn types via postcode and so on. So that's going to be our phase 2 mapping. I'm now going to pass on to Fenella, I think, for key achievements so far of the project.
Sure. So as I said in the chat, I'm Fenella from Barnet Council. In terms of where we're up to date, so we, as it says here, we've got a first iteration of a pan-London map. So we've been working with the GLA to develop this, to look at key digitally excluded needs across our boroughs initially, with a view to then be able to extend that to have a map that will be applicable across London. As Madeleine already said, we have been doing a validation piece, so around the work that Westminster have done so far on the personas. We've kind of been taking them to our services and seeing whether they resonate, with a view to basically validating them so that we can have confidence that these apply both in inner and outer London boroughs. And alongside that, we're kind of feeding that into our toolkit so that where other boroughs wider than this project want to replicate that, we kind of document the approach that we've taken through that. And then thirdly, the beginning of this week was really exciting because we held a kickoff meeting with EY Serin, who are an external research company who are going to be doing that resident engagement piece that Madeleine mentioned. So over the space of a couple of weeks, they're going to be speaking to a number of our residents across Brent, Barnet and Southwark, to do a bit more of a deep dive into some of the key barriers that some of those digitally excluded groups are facing, with the objective of pulling together an insight report that can be used both by this group but also wider in terms of giving some of those key findings to what our residents are feeling. I think I'm now handing over to Jay.
You are. So the next steps, what we're planning to do over the next few weeks, finalise that pan-London map that the others have described. So we've got all of the kind of national and local data sets on there, deciding which ones we think are most descriptive and insightful for explaining digital exclusion across London. And then moving on to validating some of that work against local data sets that the individual boroughs hold, and then individual boroughs looking at whether they want to and need to build bespoke maps which map data which can't be released into the public domain to give them more insights. All of that will come with documentation, so other boroughs can follow that process and understand what we've done and what insights you're likely to be able to see with that map. And as Fenella mentioned, research is kicking off in both phases on the quantitative and qualitative side of things. So those surveys are being finalised and research approaches agreed before the survey work kicks off. Our big kind of overarching part of the project is developing the overall toolkit, which explains all of our methodologies around mapping, around research. It also will include insights and analysis from both the research exercises that will help anyone who wants to come to understand digital exclusion in more detail, to be able to use the map, understand what that map's telling you, understand the limits of that map. You know, the data will only be able to tell us so much, but these are the things that you can draw from it, and hopefully, based on the findings from that research, give you a bit of insight into what types of interventions might be suitable for which key groups and where those key groups are across London. Another bit that is running simultaneously alongside this, we're also testing out an ethics approach. So obviously we're bringing together lots of data sets to try to understand a need across London. You know, are there any kind of unintended consequences of using that data in the way that we intend to use it, and just being very transparent about any of the risks in that space. This whole ethics process is quite new for us, so we're very much testing out that methodology as we go, and we'll be presenting that our ethics finding to the Brent Data Ethics Board for their input and feedback, and publishing all of those insights alongside the outputs I just described. So I think we have some time now for questions, and I can't actually see the chat or anything, so I don't know if Eddie or Genta are able to do that. Otherwise, I'll stop sharing.
Happy to check the chat for you. So yeah, if anyone wants to raise their hand, if they've got a question, or post it in the chat and I can shout it out. Unusual LOTI message, don't be shy. No questions at this stage.
Eddie, there's the other project that wasn't this one, the one that was developing the digital tool. Has that progressed?
The other COVID Innovation Fund projects.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Newham and Hackney have been very busy developing that sort of better referrals to make sure that the first contact that vulnerable people have with their local authority is really, really effective. So they've been exploring a link worker model, trying to make sure that we've got all the knowledge and insights to be able to connect people much more effectively with other services where they may need that. And Newham really focusing on the training to make sure that people have got the information they need, the signposting they need to be able to connect people effectively. So yeah, that's well underway, and I think we'll see some tangible results coming, and quite a lot of them ready to share across all boroughs in the next few weeks. So yeah, lots of good progress has been made on that one as well.
Thanks.
In the meantime, in the chat, Devon, welcome. You're asking, is there a list of the data sets being used to develop this map? And this is Devon from Policy and Practice, who I know many of you will be working with in other capacities too.
So I'll just jump in on that one quickly. We haven't published those data sets yet because we're still finalising exactly which ones we plan to use, but it will be made available for everyone to look at and interrogate and give us feedback on. We are, based on kind of where we're at the moment, we're looking at some demographic data around kind of older populations. We are also looking at the ONS hard to count index, which is one that was created for the census that's just happened, which is a very useful data set for understanding digital exclusion. They obviously compiled that to help them understand who wouldn't fill out the census online. The only issue with that is that at the moment that is not an open data set, so we're exploring with ONS whether there's a possibility of them opening it up, or whether there's some other way that we can kind of index to what that data set's showing using another data set. We are also looking at data on the kind of key groups, so those with disabilities, over 65s I mentioned, unemployment. So there are a whole variety in there. Again, we will publish the list, the definitive list, once we've settled on that for everyone to interrogate. And if anyone else from the project wants to jump in on that, then feel free. I may have missed a couple of key ones out.
We've also included data sets that reflect the low socioeconomic backgrounds or low income families. Steve.
Oh yeah.
Jay.
Yeah, and some data on small businesses.
And also connectivity, Ofcom data.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
And in the spirit of making sure it's replicable, what we want to do is, where there are potential data sets that other boroughs may not have, we're going to, in the toolkit, put a list of proxy data sets. So where Westminster have done their initial map and we're kind of following this, we'll put down some notes and considerations where we may have gone a slightly different route.
Thank you all for those answers. Any other questions? If not, I think that was because it was a very comprehensive presentation. So my thanks to all presenters and to Jay for organising today. Lucy, yes, good to see that the personas are stacking up for inner and outer London. They'll be very helpful. So I gather all the resources. Jay, anything on the timeline for when particular deliverables will be available for the rest of the sector to enjoy?
I think so. Overall, the project we're aiming to have all the deliverables ready by the end of June. We may well be able to release things like the modified persona bank before then. One thing to add on that, actually, worth saying, that Westminster came up with 20 or so personas that we've been testing. Where we're building new personas, we're using the same format, and we'll come up with an overall kind of new iterated bank of personas for London, all in the same format. So that should be a very useful resource for everyone, and one that hopefully we can release kind of in the interim before the final products are all available at the end of June.
I think that's it for questions, Jay. So over to you to wrap up.
Yeah, just to say, thanks for joining today, and thanks for the team here across the 5 boroughs for all their work so far. It's really coming together now, and keep a lookout on the LOTI website at the week note for updates, and there'll also be updates on the project page as well as new bits of deliverable and updates are posted. So thanks very much, and we'll wrap it up there.
Thank you, Jay. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.